friends, and familiars. This is your good pal, Matt Orozco, and I am joined by my other pal.
Lowell Greenblatt, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is another fantastic episode of Macabre Monthly, episode number 229, because it's the first time in a long time I remember to write down the episode number. Um,
Oh yeah,
so yeah, I'm keeping tabs because there has to be one of us. There has to be one of us. But nevertheless, Lowell, how you doing?
I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
tired, but I'm good. I didn't make it to the beach this summer, but I'm hoping it gets hot again and we get a little. So there's a little more time until the fall weather happens, just so I can go to the beach. But when the fall weather happens,
Oh,
oh god, it's just gonna be madness, just utter madness. I'm
it,
excited. What about yourself?
I mean, the fall season to me is like cool water on a hot day. It's just it feels refreshing. And I know this is a fact, so it's not a hyperbole or just guessing here, but they are definitely putting out Halloween decorations and selling Halloween much earlier than they ever have. So we did it, people. We've effectively changed the culture so much that we're now getting Halloween a little bit earlier. It's getting its respect, getting its due. We're also getting our Halloween cereals earlier. I've already mowed through 3 boxes of those in the past month. So taking a hiatus, but I'll be back to those.
Course, of course.
But like we always do with these episodes, we got to talk about what we've been watching. Lowell, I didn't realize how busy I've been on the watching area, side of things. But what about you? What have you been taking in?
I mean, aside from the Joe Bob marathon,
Oh,
uh,
how good was that?
that was fun. Just one banger after the next. I still haven't seen Alien Romulus. I will, but I'll tell you, in the theaters, I went to see Strange Darling. Um,
Ah, okay.
have you seen it?
No, but I feel like I'm the only one at this point because everyone's seen it, and I've heard 75% of people love it, think it's the best movie of the year. Other 25% say don't know what the fuck those 75% are talking about.
I liked it. I give it a solid 3 stars because it is very ambitious. Definitely go in knowing nothing, but I feel like even if you go in knowing nothing, like you can kind of see a twist happening early on. And I was kind of right, but it was still good. Um, very interesting. Star making performances for Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle uh, Gardner, um, who we already know and love. But yeah, just more of like a thriller than a horror movie. But JT Molnar, I think this is only like his second film, but he's going places. I can't wait to see what he does next. And so yeah, check out Strange Darling.
Okay.
And have you seen Beetlejuice yet?
No.
No. You say that
I
not going to.
no, I am. I just say because like I wanted to go see it this past weekend and I just didn't. Like I just got bound. I just was like, I don't want to leave the house today, so I just didn't. But I do, it's on my I hope to see it at some point before it leaves the theaters.
Yeah, and it'll be in the theaters for a while because it is a massive hit. Without spoilers, I liked it. Just like with Hocus Pocus 2, my criteria was just don't suck. It doesn't have to be great, just don't suck. And if it doesn't suck and it's actually pretty good, that's a nice bonus. And I actually think Hocus Pocus 2 was pretty good, and I thought this was pretty good too. Um, yeah, a lot of fun practical stuff. And I will just say, I think we as a culture take Catherine O'Hara for granted. All the returners are great, but just my God, that woman is. I rewatched the original Beetlejuice the night before I went, and there's like no lapse in her performance. It's like she just completely picked up 30 odd years after the fact. It's crazy. She's
She's a
so fun.
treasure. Like
Yes,
everything she's in, she is iconic in.
yeah, she is one of the
I
best of anything she's in. Absolutely.
and she, I mean, and she came up from the comedy circuit, and like so, like again, she came up to the improv roots. Like it's no surprise. Like what's the other Jane? What's her name? Jane.
Jane Lynch.
Yeah, Jane Lynch as like another one who's like, whatever they do, I'm going to watch it because it's going to be interesting. It may not, and they can do their range is quite good. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah. Also, real quick, because I blocked it out of my mind, my wife wanted to see the Crow remake, so we saw the Crow remake. It was us. We're the two people in America who saw it. It's not the flaming train wreck that I kind of expected it to be, that a lot of people expected it to be. It's 2 stars. It's not a good movie, but it's got some interesting ideas that it doesn't really flesh out fully, and it tries to do something different, which I respect because it doesn't try to be the original film at all. But at the same time, like, there were things about the original film that really worked that you could have had here, but you had to go for the horse and barbed wire. But anyway, but honestly, it's entirely possible that some baby bat somewhere is going to see it and it's going to be one of their favorite movies. Um,
Maybe.
but it was not one of mine. Bill Skarsgård was fine. The ending's also interesting too. They do some stuff with the lore that I thought was like, I'm like, okay, it doesn't make up for what has come before it, but okay, you're trying something.
Yeah.
It's not a naked cash grab. So yeah, those are my two jet black cents about the Crow.
I feel bad for The Crow. Just because I think it's another example of a movie get unfairly maligned simply because other people have an affection for the original. And
Mhm.
while you can make fun, like it's okay to like make fun of it. Like I'll be the first to say, like I think the new Joker movie is an absolute, like it's the biggest, most expensive troll that Hollywood's ever pulled. And I don't like. I think it's completely on brand for Todd Phillips as a filmmaker. Um, but Warner Brothers is confidently putting money into that thing, and I think at the same time, The Crow just kind of like, I don't know how it is. I haven't seen it, but I do plan on seeing it because I do think it is interesting to kind of revisit that world.
Mhm.
But I just think people just give things a hard time because it's easy to do that on the internet now, and you could just like,
Yeah,
oh, this looks like shit, and a million people like your comment on Letterboxd, and now you feel like you're internet famous. So it's easy to hate, but I also think taking these films on their merits is a better way of showing solidarity than it is to just take the piss out of it before anyone has even seen it.
yeah. And I'm not saying it's like beyond criticism or even a good movie, but like there's a whole lot of other movies you can shit on, even though it's okay to like a movie and it takes a lot to even make a terrible movie. But just, I walked out and I was like, oh, I wasn't like, how
Were
dare
you
they?
entertained?
At parts, but
Yeah.
mostly not.
Okay.
Sorry,
No.
mostly not. It tries to do something. It tries to tell a different kind of story than the first one, but there's a lot of muddled stuff, and it kind of falls apart. But it's not
Hmm.
an unrelenting disaster like many people have claimed. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well, the vitriol on the internet was certainly fierce. I
Mm.
don't know which got more maligned this year, Madam Web or this, but
No, I think it's Madam Web, and and truthfully, Madam Web is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Like truly, it's like a black hole of ideas. It's like who okayed this? Who said this was who like from it's one of those almost like Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice where it's just you can't imagine actually every single step of the pre-production and production process going, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah, we're going to do that. No, it's a movie no one wants to be in.
I mean, the more, you and I have both been exposed to quite a bit more kind of filmmakers and getting a chance to talk with them about process and how these things go. And I think it's become quite common that a lot of the studio movies, they don't necessarily follow a script. And so sometimes like it just goes on vibes. I mean, I think there was just an article recently where Todd Phillips was talking about how they would rip up the Joker script or something like that in the middle of shooting. And it's like, I don't know to what extent this is just, press for PR's sake, but yeah, I think that's how we get some of these really unfortunately weird and like absurd movies, is that no one's there to say that doesn't make logical sense. You can't just
Maybe
do it because it sounds
that.
cool.
Yeah. Hmm.
But hey, that's pretty much Zack Snyder's entire filmography. No hate,
Ayo.
because there are some real, he's the only person that's ever effectively adapted The Watchmen. Oh well, actually I take that back. The HBO series was good, but I don't consider that an adaptation. That's kind
Not
of
a
its own thing.
Man, I tried to watch that new director's cut of Rebel Moon just to give him the benefit of the doubt. There is not enough THC in the
Who
world
has the time?
to make those films palatable. What is and oh, that's another thing I forgot that I watched. I rewatched the Dawn of the Dead remake, and it's great. It's fantastic, but it makes me sad because it's like, where's this guy? What
So
happened, guy?
you can see so much of what Zack Snyder will become in that movie, though,
Yeah.
because he doesn't know how to handle character well. He
Mhm.
just knows how to handle personality, and that's only like none of these characters, like in Dawn of the Dead, the only characters you actually care for is the guy across the roof who never talks. Um, because everyone else is so disposable. Like they're not that interesting as people, and as they're characterized. And it's so much of a like, don't pay attention to Dawn of the Dead. Don't pay attention to the original Dawn of the Dead, like subplots and subtext. Just focus on the zombie action. What if there was more zombie action? And
And they're right.
that's where he succeeds. Like Zack Snyder minus the slow mo can shoot the hell out of a chaotic action scene in a violent one at that. So I always like, again, some filmmakers, I'm gonna turn on a light here, but like I've there's I don't know if you've seen this more or not, but some filmmakers like direct in pairs now. And I do think that there's a lot of value in some of these guys like Zack Snyder and Ari Aster, who are like really good at one thing, like, or a handful of things like that they do really well, but they need someone to help fill in the gap. I'd like to see more of these collaborations, and like, and there's plenty of people that have like writing partners and shit like that. They're behind the scenes, but I think that's what we need to admit, that sometimes we can't do it all. Need some help.
Yeah, that's true.
Ugh. But yeah, Zack Snyder. What could
Yes.
have been? What could have been?
Hold on. I'm going to refill my water because I've gone through it already. But then I want to
How
hear.
dare?
Uh, then I want to hear what you've been watching. Did you do do did you do did you do?
Zoom button. All right. So yeah, the what could have been with Zack Snyder? Who knows? But well, we do know actually. We know now that we know that he would make a bunch of other movies that would make an impressive amount of money considering the quality that they are. Um, but almost a guaranteed amount of money because of the properties they were taking over. So,
Uh, anyway, cast them out of our lives for the rest of the month. So, what have you been watching?
all right. I talk about Suitable Flesh last time?
No,
Okay.
did hadn't seen it yet?
No, in fact, I've been doing a lot of like Shutter backlog
Mm.
watching over the past few weeks. So that's what most of these are, or no, not most of them, two of them. But so alongside the night marathon, which was outstanding, my old ass could not stay awake the entire time. So I definitely, but it was nice waking up to Joe Bob. Just like, oh wait, like I think Fade to Black was playing. I was like, oh hell yeah. So um, so yeah, took a rip, the vape, and then went back to sleep, I think. But anyway, I watched Suitable Flesh, which I kind of dug it. It's super weird. Like it's like, and not like in like a, oh, these are weird ideas, like in a, what's the tone of this movie supposed to be? Is this porn? Is this like
I
softcore porn?
thriller, I believe it's a super full moon movie almost. I guess
You
you
know
could say.
what? I compared it to the movies that you would see like on Cinemax late at night that were like horror movies with just lots of softcore nudity in them. So, but I also appreciated that like someone was willing to make, like, once I realized that that's what Joe Lynch is doing, I'm like, okay, this guy's making a sleazy fucking scary movie. Once I'm like, I get this.
Yeah.
Nothing felt weird about it anymore.
Mhm.
I still think, as much as I assume that Heather Graham's probably a really sweet person, I do not find her to be a very good actor. It's kind of, and maybe that's maybe her role in this, like it's supposed to be kind of corny, but she always tends to kind of play the same person. But small gripe. Some really amazing moments. She totally goes unhinged in this, which she does absolutely beautifully. The rear camera backup scene, surprised we haven't gotten that yet, but that was solid. Barbara Crampton actually though steals the show, in my opinion. She outacts everyone. Whoever the guy playing like the young man, sex appeal. I didn't
Oh
understand that very much, but yeah, it was cool. I like it. It went all for it at the end, which I think is is the saving grace, that it actually doesn't take itself too seriously,
uh-huh.
because nothing about that movie is that serious. Even the premise is kind of half half cocked. So, um, no pun intended. But yeah, I liked it. You saw this one, right?
Yeah, I had fun with it. I reviewed it for the site, I believe, when it came out. That style of horror movie has never really been a favorite of mine, but I'm in the tank for whatever Joe Lynch does. And yeah, like it did seem a little off at first, but once you have to key into what it's doing, and then it's like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. And yeah,
Yeah.
just awesome practical effects. Uh,
Yes,
good stuff. And I think it counts as it's based on a Lovecraft short
it
story.
is.
Counts as a Lovecraftian movie. So I'm like, all right, we got one.
I mean, it's definitely Lovecraft by way of Stuart Gordon, right? Because like Stuart
Oh,
Gordon was very much like the guy's like, oh, I like this idea that Lovecraft had, but everything else around it sucks. So I'm just going to take the good part and make my own cool shit.
yeah, I think he
Um,
was gonna make it actually before he passed away, or he was in talks because it's written by his longtime screenwriter. With I think Joe might have done a rewrite or something, but yeah, it is like the best unmade Stuart Gordon film, which is cool to see.
yeah, and he's basically the, father of Lovecraft on film as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I like that one. My next um Shutter watch was stop motion, which I really dug this. Like I don't know, I can't tell if I loved it yet, but I'm still thinking about it, and I think that's a good sign as far as like my viewing, like how I think I'm gonna rank it, rate it. But have you seen this one at all?
Yeah, I actually saw it last year at the Brooklyn Horror Film Fest. Um, I liked it, but I didn't go nuts for it like a lot of people did. Mostly because, like, just like with what we were just talking about, the movie that I forgot, um, I like called a twist early on, and I'm
Oh,
like, oh, okay, it's gonna be like that. Okay, but it was kind of cool to see like for there's like that obsessive artist horror subgenre, but to see that through the lens of a stop of not just an animator but a stop motion animator was really fascinating. I mean, you can imagine stop motion animation like turning people crazy in the real world, anyway.
I
So
mean, you've seen
yeah,
Phil Tippett, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
so like I feel like
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of like there are a lot of flaws in the story as a whole. Like it's not a very good, well told story, but it doesn't, I don't think it's trying to be. And I think what I like most about it is the visuals and the aesthetics, just the blending of the stop
yeah.
motion in the real world and the kind of real life. Yeah, and
Oh, little
it's
what is
gross.
the meat man or something? Ugh,
Oh,
yeah,
the hat, is it the Hat Man? The Shadow Man? Yeah, the Hat Man. Something like that. Fuck, I
yeah.
don't remember.
Yeah, I remember what it looks like, and that it sticks with me. Yeah, that part that does stick with me a little bit, but yeah,
But
it
yeah,
was still
it was
cool
good.
for everyone. Yeah,
Um, and I don't, yeah, like I think what I like most about it is how different it is and how weird it is. But the
yeah,
more I think about like the story and the narrative, I'm like, it's good, but it's not great.
yeah. It's vibes. Yeah.
It's vibes. It is very much vibes. The next one was Immaculate, which
Oh,
um I
mm-hmm.
kind of wish I would have seen this before the first
So
Omen,
mm-hmm.
because
They're
unf
kind of the same movie in a lot of ways, like a
like they
lot
are, and
of ways.
they're almost like they're like two sides of a coin. Like
You can say Immaculate is like a sequel to the first Omen. You can say that it takes place in the same universe.
you
It's
could,
just another group of another set of Catholics somewhere. Yeah,
but they with different intentions, right? One's
yeah,
anti-Christ, one's for Christ. So,
yeah.
and I think that's what made this one a little interesting is like kind of the twist they put on what is actually happening. Um, Sydney Sweeney, I think, did a great job, like just kind of not being what you would expect her to be, and just playing it straight, and going completely unhinged at the end. Like, uh,
That's cool.
she
Yeah.
she earned some acting points for that last 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Um, but it is a much more slower paced movie than the first Omen. Like I think it's even longer by about 10 minutes. And
I feel like
so
First Omen's longer, no? Or the experience of watching it, I felt like Immaculate went a little faster, but maybe
I
that's
may
just
be
because.
wrong on that one, but it's like the first Omen has these really obscene moments of gore, like in the middle of the movie, kind of like the original Omen movie has these like totally violent deaths out of nowhere. And I think that Immaculate works because it does a good job laying the groundwork for a good buildup, but it
Mhm.
doesn't kind of throw a lot of those firecrackers in the mix like First Omen did. Like that scene where she pulls the guy from the car wreck in First Omen, that's like midway through the movie.
Yeah,
So
his possession. That's his possession thing, which is like, oh, that's a neat little tribute.
yeah, I get
Yeah,
it. I like it. But yeah, I do think this was did not see Nunsploitation making a comeback this year.
right.
Um, so I thought it was actually quite good. Won't end
Yeah,
up on my top list. That's for I don't think this year. But this year's been
yeah,
just too good, like,
yeah.
unfortunately.
It's fine. I mean, I I want to say I liked Immaculate more than the first Omen, and part of the reason was because it's not feeding any masters. Like the
Right.
first Omen, like no matter what, it's got to end on a note where someone called it the Rogue One of the Omen series, and I'm like, all right, but this really was able to do its own thing, and I feel like it is a bell that I keep ringing, but not having to deal with franchise baggage really put Immaculate over the hill for me. There are moments in the first Omen that are incredible and much better than some of the stuff in Immaculate, but just like Immaculate is just steady, whereas like First Omen just kind of dips and raises in quality throughout. That's how I felt anyway.
I think you're actually hitting on like something I wasn't think like I hadn't or thought about, but I think I believe more and more is that I remember the flash bang in the Omen because it's much brighter, but the narrative, like the groundwork of Immaculate, is much better. Like it's a much
Yeah,
better narrative. It's a much kind of more consistent movie, and because it saves all that good stuff to the end. Not to say there's not really great moments of tension and dread and all that leading up to it, because there certainly are, but it saves a lot of the good stuff for the last act. Whereas the first Omen is like, hey, throw in a vagina scene real quick, throw in a real close up of vagina and a baby
that
in the
was
end of the first
great.
act.
Yeah, that
Um,
maybe horror shot of the year, but it
so
didn't make up for the rest of
it
it.
has some European sensibilities about it that I think is what
Yeah,
draws my affections. But
yeah,
nevertheless, I thought Immaculate was quite good. And good for let's get more of the stuff like that. More
yes,
stuff out of nowhere, beholden to none. Next one up was an anthology that looked really interesting, and Jamie on the site reviewed it. Lore. It's got Richard Brake in it as a kind of like a narrator of sorts for an anthology, and I like this. It's not. It's unfortunate that like it kind of moves too fast for an anthology. Like, it's one of the few times I'm like, this thing needs to actually space its like take its time a little bit more. It could be a little longer. And they kind of waste Richard Brake. Like he does like every scene that Richard Brake in is like is in is just the best scene in the movie, but that way they use him kind of to wrap up the bookends it's not great. It's not really fulfilling, but there are some really interesting cool stories in there. It's nothing I think that will change, like it's not the next great anthology film by any means, but well shot, well made, good practical effects, interesting stories that are not the norm. um, and the weakest one is actually the slasher one, I think. Like it's
yeah.
still good, but it's like it's not the best. So had you checked this one out before
No, I
or no?
thought it was like a podcast series, but it's an anthology film. I guess I have to check
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, it's good. It's also short. It's 90 minutes, so it's not doesn't take it doesn't take too much time. And speaking of short, the last movie I checked out was Paranormal. I had not, so prefacing, I've only seen the first Paranormal Activity movie, but I own the entire box set because it was on sale, and I have no fucking self-control sometimes. But I was dared, if you will, by one of my colleagues on the Core 4 podcast to we each gave each other a movie to watch, and I was given Next of Kin, the Paranormal Activity, the most recent one.
Wait, that. Oh, the one like the Amish one.
Yeah, the one that went direct straight to Paramount Plus is like their big debut movie.
Oh,
Did you see it?
yeah.
Oh, it sounds like you didn't like it.
Not really. In fact, it felt like it was kind of unrelated to Paranormal Activity at all, and it was just a found footage movie that they slapped that title on, like the Weinsteins did with Hellraiser. I don't know where the truth is in that, but it's what it felt like.
I will say this, as someone who hasn't followed the Paranormal Activity storylines, and I think I've seen the second one because I think I did watch the second one. That's like a prequel to the
Yeah.
first one, right? Okay, yeah, I did watch that. Um, I actually think I like that. Like I like that. That's a really good way to not continue beating a dead horse on, but using a franchise. So if I think about something like the Blair Witch Project, right? Like there is not much more we can do with the Blair Witch Project in its current state. But if someone were to take the Blair Witch Project presents like a different story or something like that, like that's kind of a bad example. But the point is we have a lot of these ailing franchises that like unfortunately you can't keep digging back in the same well and finding water, um, as we're
You
starting to
find,
see with
yeah.
I think there's a fatigue starting to set in pretty significantly around remakes, but we're also seeing a lot of original horror, so I think like it's probably what's off-putting some of that. But anyway, I like Next of Kin. I actually liked it quite a bit. I do not think its biggest flaw is that it's not a found footage movie and it wants to be. There's this fallacy about found footage movies that they just need to take place in the first person point of view. No, they're supposed to be representative of a film that you found, so it should adhere to the logic of a VHS tape, which is that it comes from it can't switch to different perspectives or different cameras. Um, it can't like there's one part at the end where it goes to body cams, and I'm like, there's no like that's not this isn't found footage anymore. This is just first person horror. So I think if you were to like
We're trying to like change it to, because I think found footage might be a little dated, at least in like the mind, that term at least might be dated in the minds of the people who make these. So it might just be like, well, screw you, I'm going to film my movie however I want, you can call it whatever you want.
and you know what, like hey, more power to you if the intent is to make the fuck you found footage movie. But I do think it affects the quality of the experience because found footage is so much about putting you in that position that the more you take people out of it with logic and very obvious, like well, all of a sudden we have a objective third person camera here, and now we don't. So it switches between the narrative and it can't decide. That's its flaw. But everything else about it's pretty solid. Like I think if you do take out the paranormal activity part, it's the same movie. So you might be right that someone was just looking to slap a license on it to launch the new streaming service. Um, but when the movie's good, hey, I'm not going to hate on them taking taking the title.
I
It
don't.
goes all out at the end.
I do remember that, but I don't remember much else about the movie. Maybe it's time for a rewatch. I think I'll
I
have
think if
to.
you divorce yourself from the idea that it's a paranormal activity movie and just watch it as this is a first person horror movie, then it's a lot easier to take in.
Cool.
But that's it for me. Going to see Zombie tomorrow with the Fabio Frizzi live score, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, for our now we've covered what we watch. We're not going to be doing news this time because one of the things we are going to be introducing this month and hopefully going forward continuously is two Macabre Monthlies. That's right, a double dose of Lowell and Matt. You asked for the best and you got us, and you're getting it two more times. So
And you're gonna like it. We
yeah,
hope.
yeah, and you're gonna watch it maybe. But the idea behind these splitting up is to kind of have a more traditional episode like we've been doing here our top 5 list. And then have a different episode that kind of explores more thematic elements and topics we can discuss more open forum. Do things like commentaries. We'll be covering Fantastic Fest for our next kind of Dubai monthly, Macabre bi-monthly. I know
Well,
we'll have to
more
we'll have to work on the branding.
monthly. There
Yeah,
you
there we go. There we go.
wordplay.
We're bringing Bennifer back. We're just smushing words together. Um,
Well, they tried that and the reboot didn't take. But hey,
no, hey, who
uh,
didn't see that coming? But this isn't a celebrity gossip podcast. This is so we'll do Fantastic Fest for a second episode, but for this one, Lowell had a good idea, and you can't let a good idea rest. It was they shoot sequels, don't they? And of course, there's something there. It's September, SequelTember. Again, we're in the word smushing business. So we figured we'd take this time to talk about our top 5 underappreciated sequels. So just sequels that we think need some attention. But before we get into our list, I'm curious to know like why why do you think, and when you think about your list, why do you think some of these films got passed over? What is about them that made them less desirable, less effective?
well, they're sequels. And to quote William Goldman, the famous screenwriter, sequels are horror movies. Like
Wars
they're
movies.
yeah, that's what he calls them in the '70s vernacular. They're really just meant to continue the franchise at the very base level. They're meant to continue the franchise and bring people back in. Who knows if whoever's making them actually wants to tell a good story? And if you get lucky, they are, and it's good. But honestly, some of these I really thought I would find more that were sort of like hidden gems, but I went with a bunch that are lauded, but I feel like not enough. Or maybe like at the time they got good reviews and they kind of like faded away a little bit and maybe aren't what people talk about when they talk about the respective series of films. So some of these might not even be sleepers, but they're damn good. And if anything, I want people to see this and go, "Oh yeah, that one." That's my goal.
Well, it's an admirable goal, and I think that even though they are, horrors movies, I will say that I made it a point to only pick sequels, number twos in a series for my list.
Oh, interesting.
Because as I was writing out my list, they were all starting out to be number twos, and as I got to fourth one, I'm like, you know what? Let's just make it 5 and make it a thing. But there could be more fun to be had if we go to. I think we did do like a threes or a fours at one point. I think
Yeah,
pretty sure we did that.
and yeah, it's interesting. 4 out of 5 of mine are twos, and only one is a three. So maybe we should have done that.
Well,
Ooh, oh
it's
well.
too late now, and accidents happen, but miracles, well,
Ooh,
those just, and so do they. So we'll just call this an accidental miracle. So what's the
yes.
first one on your list?
Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh.
Ah, such a good one. Not
Yeah,
on mine, but damn good.
it really is. It's Bill Condon before he made Gods and Monsters and The New Beauty and the Beast in Chicago, and basically before he became like a huge Hollywood director. It's pretty damn good. It takes the Candyman story to New Orleans, and you get a real feel for the city.
It
Uh,
fits there.
yeah, very, very much so. Farewell to the Flesh is, I don't know if this is true, but in the movie they say that's what Mardi Gras means. And it's the Candyman haunting New Orleans, and we get into his backstory, and it fits really well with what came before. I mean, the original Candyman is still better, but I feel like not like the people who've seen this like it, but it doesn't get enough love, in my opinion. The third one can go right to hell, and I think Tony Todd would agree with me. But like this one is actually like a measured, considerably good horror film in the heartbeat just before Scream. This and I think one other I have are in that period in the pre-Scream '90s where we didn't know what was happening with horror. It was sort of slowly evolving, but we weren't sure into what. It came out in '95, and yeah, really good Tony Todd performance, and yeah, solid.
I did not put this one on my list, but it's a damn good pick because you're right. It absolutely deserves more attention. And as far as sequels go to movies that are hard to make a sequel off of, um, this does a pretty good job introducing a new love interest, but still paying respect to the Virginia Madsen characters. So, and love a good Daniel Robitaille backstory. The more we can get into that. So, yeah, that's a great pick. And again, you're right. The New Orleans setting just, it's, I don't know, it just fits.
Yeah,
Um,
it wears it really well. It's not just like, hey, let's put Candyman in New Orleans. It's like it is like a new. It feels like a New Orleans movie.
Yeah, it almost feels like Candyman is like a New Orleans like mythos. Like it kind of has
It
that.
kind of is. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what the movie's saying. That's where it comes from. But yeah, it's cool.
that's a good one. My first one, so I'm gonna go in orders of quality, as far as the quality of the movie itself. Starting at the bottom of that list is Puppet Master 2. Um,
Not
some
three.
will say that this is better than the first Puppet Master. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if in your I think the third movie is the best in the entire series because it's the most coherent. But that said, the second one is just so out there and doesn't make a lick of fucking sense, but it kind of knows it. And it has some really weird story beats. Like Andre Toulon is now a bad guy when he's supposed to be the good guy. And then he becomes the good guy in the third movie. There's just no consistency in the Puppet Master series as far as narrative and lore is concerned. So the two is kind of the beginning of like what the Puppet Master series would ultimately become, which is just a bunch of really interesting ideas slopped together into 80 to 90 minutes. Um, and the second one had some of the best practical effects in the franchise. You get the introduction of the torch puppet, and I just have an affection for these movies. Like I saw them at such an impressionable age. I saw them so many times. They felt like movies I shouldn't have been seeing. Um, and to this day, while I don't think they're good movies, I think the second one does kind of epitomize Full Moons at its most hubris-like state, where it's just spending money on things, and it looks good, just doesn't make any sense when they're doing it. Kind of like the subspecies movies. After two, they just devolve into nonsense, but they're fun nonsense.
Yeah, pretty much. Um, you know, one and two of Puppet Master kind of blend together for me a little bit. It feels like they were kind of shot at the same time. I don't know if they were, but two was the first one I saw, and yeah, it is pretty fun. Those life size puppets still freak me out. Like, what the hell was that about? But I do like Puppet Master 4 and 5. I have an affinity for those. Jeff Burr,
Is
uh,
that the ones where they have where they're fighting like the totem character?
yeah, where
Yeah,
they fight an evil puppet, which is actually pretty cool. Puppet on
it
puppet.
is. And if you're ever feeling masochistic, you can do the chronological viewing or the chronological order viewing of Puppet Master series.
No, thank you.
I'll let you take a guess what year I did that in.
2020.
Yeah, at the year of desperation. Because the first thing I did when we got stay-at-home orders is like, well, now's the time to break open that Puppet Master box set I've been holding on to and carve through these in chronological, not series order, chronological.
You poor son of a bitch.
I live to tell the tale. So yeah, that's Puppet Master 2. What's the next one on your list?
These are really in no particular order, but 28 weeks later, with
Ooh,
one where, yeah, right? Like, as soon as I say it, people are like, yeah, that was one of the, like, it's dark for a zombie movie, but it is dark. It's a bleak one. But it's great. I don't think we necessarily needed it. I think 28 Days Later tells a complete story. But if you're going to tell another story in the world, it's really good. The cast is fantastic. Idris Elba, Rose Byrne, Jeremy Renner, and I think Imogen Poots in like her first movie, but just like really, really good, fast zombie action. Um, I don't know what the hell that 28 months later is going to be. I don't
yeah.
know why. I don't know why we need a new trilogy, but yeah, I think as people go into those movies, they should remember 28 weeks later, which is still really good.
I've only seen it twice. And it's been a really long time since my last viewing. So that's a good reminder to go watch it. The problem I think is gonna be finding it because I'm pretty sure both of those movies are
I
not
mean,
easy to find these days. I know
I
the 20. I know the first one is 21. 28 weeks later is or 21 days later is 28 days later is hard to find. But
I found. I mean, it was a few years ago at Best Buy. I got a Blu-ray 2-pack of 28 Days and 28 Weeks,
ooh,
somewhere up there. But yeah, it was at Best Buy in a 2-pack. I don't know why it's not on 4K yet. Maybe because of the digital stuff. But yeah, try and find it. It's good.
yeah, it's need to add that to my rewatch list. It's been enough time. Uh, again, we're continuing with quality here. So my next one is not a great movie, but I have an affection for it, and it's Gate 2. Not
Uh,
the Gate 2. They dropped the for some reason and just go to Gate 2.
I've never actually seen this one, but I've always been curious about it.
You know, again, this movie kind of hit me at a very particular time where I remember I used to see it. I almost had this kind of weird habit of catching it on free preview weekends whenever the premium channels would like give you free access for the weekend. I would
Uh-huh.
always catch this as like a late night Saturday movie on either the movie channel or Showtime. So I think I just ended up seeing it a lot of times because of just coming across it that way. And I also love the first Gate movie. I think it's
Oh,
to this day the best, probably the most extreme example of gateway horror that you could probably get as far as what's uh, you could probably show to a child. But
Tinder.
um, yeah, 80s baby. But yeah, I think Gate 2 is a really sad story, kind of like Pet Cemetery 2. It really doubles down on the just let's make these people's lives awful. And you really feel for the main, I forget his name now, but the main character, he's the friend in the first
Wes
one.
or the Metalhead Kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's some really like again, it's not a good movie, but there's some really interesting scenes, like the one where they go out to dinner and the he meets these two guys that are like, trying to take advantage of the new ability to grant wishes that he's come across, and they want all this money, but then the money turns to literal shit. And they're like trying to pay with pieces of shit. It's like coming out of their wallets. It's just so weird and really good practical effects, but no really good plot to hold it all together. At the same
Oh,
time, it's just kind of like a fever dream of movie. And you're right, it came out in the early 90s where there was this weird, like, hey, you got a horror movie? It's
yeah.
pretty weird, man. I don't know if you want it. No, no, no. You got a horror movie? All right, give it to me. Give it to me. Let's put it on something. And so you got this really weird
And
shit.
Hitchcock's oeuvre.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's just you got a lot of really odd shit. And if it wasn't a full moon production, it was just, like the studios were just kind of holding on to some weird shit too. So anyway, Gate 2 is one that it's not near as good as the original, but it's definitely worth a watch, just more at a curio standpoint. But it does have some fun bits to it, and again, worth your time. Maybe not worth your adoration though, but worth your time.
Well, speaking of early 90s cheese, people forget Trimark was the video company that put out all those sons of bitches, or
You're gonna
most of
say Return of the Living Dead 3, aren't you?
I'm saying A3, but I'm not saying Return of the Dead 3. Do you know what 3 I'm going with?
I'm trying to think of other threes that came out on Trimark. Hell on Earth?
No, that was Dimension.
That was
God,
Dementia.
we are
I don't
such
know.
Leprechaun 3.
Oh, fuck yeah. Okay. That's the
Yeah.
Vegas one.
See, yeah, exactly. It is. Uh, I I used this word in a non-ironic way recently, but I'm going to use it here in whatever damn way I seem fit. It is the apotheosis of the Leprechaun franchise. It never got better than Leprechaun 3 and missed me with that Leprechaun in space nonsense because that was fun, but like it's just one long eye roll of a movie. Leprechaun in Vegas, oh my god. Some of the deaths in this, the guy turning into a goblin. It's just like a romp. Him and Elvis. And the first Leprechaun movie isn't great.
No.
Second, they're watchable, but like 3 is the first time I'm like, this is fun. Like this
Yeah.
is cool. I would rewatch this. Amazing death scene for Caroline Williams.
Oh yeah.
Probably the best in the franchise. And yeah, Warwick Davis, I hope you made a freaking fortune, man, because you're giving us gold.
He really is. And there's just so many lores about the Leprechaun franchise that make it hilarious. Like he has to shine shoes. all these things just make it kind of a farce. But I had the pleasure of watching the third one with the what is it, like the Joe Bob Patreon. He does, monthly
Oh,
watches, or he just watch alongs with the Patreon group. And we
uh,
watched Leprechaun 3, and to hear Joe Bob's take on a movie of such cinematic purity, certainly something to hear and behold.
there's a I can't believe the Leprechaun films are like worthy of an online theory. But the fan theory is that it's actually a different Leprechaun in each film, which kind of tracks. Like that's why one is really about the shoes. One like can be is more susceptible to iron and all that. Also, the continuity doesn't really work, but whatever it is, it's fun.
Who do you think's keeping the Bible on the Leprechaun lore at this point? Like, who's
That,
sitting there with?
that's who I think. Do you know he said like they asked him if you could work on any franchise, what would you? And he's like Leprechaun. He's like, I
Wait,
would
who
do
said that?
Darren Lynn Bousman of Saw, which
God
I don't.
bless him.
Yeah, right. I don't know what that movie looks like, but if he wants it, let him take it.
Yeah, let him cook. Let him if he can bring some Saw level violence to a Leprechaun movie, sign me the fuck up.
I want to play a game.
Yeah.
My God, like a Saw movie with the Fae. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there's potential there for something completely awful, but also entirely watchable.
Mhm. For real.
Well, damn, Leprechaun 3 is a good one. There's so many good. I'm kind of realizing how many underappreciated sequels there are. Um,
Yeah.
just from your list alone. My next one is one that I don't think is underappreciated, but then again, I also think it's followed under the kind of semi-underseen category, which is Maniac Cop 2. Um, Maniac Cop is great. It's a fantastic horror movie with a pretty decent subtext about, police brutality and violence and policing system. But the second one is better. It's a better movie in every regard. Like it's got better production value. They kill Bruce Campbell off, which I don't think makes it a better movie, but I like that they're just saying "fuck you" to legacy characters because
Yeah.
Bill Lustig and Bill Lustig does what he wants. But it also has some great practical effects and kind of stunt effects work. In fact, I brought this up in the um, recording we did with Paul, where he talked about favorite stunts because the fire stunt in this thing is insane. It goes on
Oh,
for forever. And the whole thing is just a lot of fun. Like it moves a lot faster than the first one. Definitely a lot more deaths, a lot gorier. And I forget the guy's name, the actor who kind of takes on the lead detective role. He's got that
Robert Davi.
yeah, Robert, yeah, unmistakable face.
Yeah.
Um, he plays a pretty solid kind of cop in this, as he always does. So I don't know. I love Maniac Cop 2 quite a bit. I don't. The third one is awful. But again, if you can go out on a high on the second one, you're in a good place.
Yeah. I know they're a good duology. I remember watching them with Joe Bob on Shutter, but I can't remember the last time I saw them before that. But yeah, great double feature. They blend a little bit together for me, but I do remember like yeah, Leo Rossi in the second one in the role that Joe Zito. No, not Joe Zito. The guy who played Maniac who had passed away. He was going to do the Leo Rossi role, but Leo Rossi just
Oh yeah, Joe Zito, Joseph Zito.
no. Joseph Zito directed Friday the 13th Part 4.
Oh yeah. Oh God, what's his name? Fuck, this is gonna
Like,
bother the shit out of me.
hold on. I got it.
How do we not know this?
Technical difficulties. No, don't go to Amazon. What the hell? Joe
Joe
Spinell.
Spinell. God damn it. Yes.
Yes.
It wasn't Zito. Slippy, sloppy, swappy,
Yeah.
Samsonite.
I
There we
I
go.
think in the movie his name is Zito, but yeah, Joe Spinell. Anyway, my next one is it's pretty revered, but I feel like it just lives forever in the shadow of the original film, which isn't fair because it's freaking fantastic. Is The Strangers Prey at Night. And to
Yes.
be fair, it's trying to do a little bit of what the original is trying to do, but it's not trying to do the exact same thing. And when it does finally carve out its own identity and become its own thing, that's where it's like, yeah, that's where it makes a name for itself. The soundtrack, the sound design, the fight scenes, the colors, the staging, just man, I'll watch whatever that director does, Johannes Roberts. I feel like he still hasn't done something on that level again, but like I know he has it in him. And man, that movie is just a great surprise. Big recommendation.
I owe that movie an apology because I when I first saw it, I didn't like it because of the way it ended, because I felt like, oh, this is just so absurd. It's not real. And I'm like, wait a minute. I think about this for a second. The first Strangers movie was very much about trying to be authentic. There's not a lot that happens in that movie. It's all about dread and tension. Um, and the second one is like, no, 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 let's fuck all that shit. Let's just be a good slasher movie. And so I've now come around to the point, which some might say is heresy, that I think the second movie is better than the first one, but it more appeals to my what I like. And I think the first movie's kind of boring. Like it's not it's definitely very iconic in some ways, but it's not a very like for me at least it moves at a snail's pace. And I don't really like hanging out with Liv Tyler and that other guy too much.
You know what the first one, you know what the first Stranger feels like? Hot take. It feels like the first Friday the 13th.
Hmm.
It's slow and it's not that great, but it's got a few scenes in it which are absolutely killer. And I think that more than anything is what like keeps its legacy alive. Is those like bursts of holy shit.
And it's
You
the
know?
first. Like it kind of has like the fortune of being the first movie, so it will always get the flowers, even though a sequel might best it like
Yeah.
this one has.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm on board with that one. So I have a runners up. I realize what I'll mention at the end. My next one is a sequel to my favorite movie, Waxwork 2. Because if you like the first Waxwork, you're gonna love the second one. It's the pretty much the same movie, just with a different set of scenarios and a far goofier storyline, but it still maintains the same sense of playfulness and fun and like goriness and humor that the other one had. It also has Bruce Campbell starring in an amazing cameo role where he plays um, a paranormal investigator who gets his chest ripped open and then a bunch of bags of salt thrown at him. It's way more slapstick than the first one is. So I think it's kind of like Evil Dead and well, no, it's a bad comparison because Evil Dead 2 or Evil Dead really isn't funny at all. But it definitely leans more into the silliness in the second one, and has a really epic cross time it does one of those things like remember that movie Stay Tuned where it tries to ape on parodies like different kind of pop culture TV shows, and it does that
Sure.
at the end of this movie where like they travel through time to different sound stages and different, so it has a lot of fun and playfulness to it. It Story plot line wise, like it doesn't the first Waxwork has so many plot holes that I just choose to ignore. And that doesn't really get solved in this one, but at least it doesn't try and it's a bit easier to bite. In this case, we have a magical compass. So I got to say, magical compass explains everything. Perfect. That's all I need to
Time
know.
Turner. There we go.
Yep,
Yeah.
compass, time. You got me. We're on board. There is a change up. What's her name? Michelle. Oh my God, terrible with names.
Obama.
She um, Deborah Johnson, that's her name. She is no longer playing the role of the love interest. It's replaced by a new actor. She's fine. It's all Zach Galligan's show anyway. So, um, but from that standpoint, solid movie. Anthony Hitchcock's. I don't know what. I do know what happened to him. It's not great. Movies after he was doing after the late '90s just started to turn into crap. But Waxwork 2 is so underappreciated and underseen. And if you buy the Vestron Blu-ray, you get it with Waxwork. So you have no choice. Watch it.
Hmm. Nice. So I guess we're on my last one, which another one that is pretty revered, but I will go to my grave saying that Day of the Dead is better than Dawn of the Dead.
Wow.
Intended. Yeah, it is. It's just, and I just watched the 4K of Dawn of the Dead on the big screen, and Dawn of the Dead is great, and Day of the Dead is better. Day of the Dead is a leaner, meaner zombie film with better effects. It's more dynamic. It's just God make my day. That's what I say. I mean, look, there's no day without Dawn of the Dead. There's no zombie movie culture without Dawn of the Dead. But it's just he made a better film, you guys. It's a better film.
I don't.
It,
I all right. Maybe it's my.
I know I'm mostly alone here, but yeah.
I don't think you are though. I think there's a lot of people that are afraid to admit that they like Day of the Dead more because you are right on a few things. Like it is a faster paced movie. Like it doesn't. Dawn of the Dead. I was talking about this with somebody else that like Dawn of the Dead. It's not. There's not a lot that happens like as a zombie. It's really just watching people survive in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
Um, and but what works about it is that it does the survival part very well, and it makes this kind of mundane situation or this mundane and extraordinary. It combines the mundane and the extraordinary in a very pleasing way, an entertaining way. And when the zombie violence does kick in, it's a lot of fun. Um, but Day of the Dead, you are right. Like it's meaner. Like it's way more leaning into like this is what happens when humans are left without rule and if we don't organize and create policy and law.
And it's scarier. Like you're not raiding like the supermarket bank in a local mall. You're stuck underground with gun nuts, you know?
Yeah, and like the whole like I think the bub thing is interesting, like I think that is the natural progression. I am curious to know what could have been had George Romero gotten all the money that he intended to get for this, because there was a lot of fuckery with his budget that happened in Day of the Dead that just eliminated so many ideas. But in that way, it's kind of a miracle that we got what we got.
That's true.
But yeah, I don't know how hard of a take that is, but it's a good take. I don't agree with it, but it's a good take.
Sure. To each their own, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's true. I also think I just have an unrealistic affection for the original Dawn of the Dead because of how many times I saw it when I was younger. Um, but I digress. My last one, well, I've got a runner up, but my last one before that one is Phantasm 2.
Huh.
Um, if
The
I were to tell anyone the what?
the Hollywood Phantasm. It's
Yes,
a Phantasm with a budget. Yeah.
yes, Don Coscarelli got so much money to make this movie. And it was at the height of MGM. It was the height of the horror purchasing spree, where pretty much if you had a horror script, studios would give you money to go make it. Um, but Phantasm 2 it makes as much sense as the first one, which is very little.
Mhm.
But that's kind of a common theme within the Phantasm franchise. So if you don't dig it, you can kind of get off the bus with those movies. But it does
Get off
introduce
first.
yeah, it's I mean the whole thing does. I'll be the first to admit as much as I love it, none of it makes sense. And it trips over its own logic all the time, but it's pleasing visually. So, and the
Yeah.
second one's a perfect example of that. It has one of the best death scenes. You think you can do better than the ball to the head? Show me ball to the mouth, ball to the back, out the mouth, and then
Yeah.
getting stuck in the mouth. Um, I used to have the Fangoria where that was featured on the cover. Um, but yeah, it's just a faster, bigger movie. It really kind of messes with the continuity of the ending right away, which is funny. It retcons its own ending. Um, but yeah, it's just so much more fun. It's bigger, more money. The quadruple shotgun makes an appearance for the first time, which is an iconic weapon. And
Got
Reggie
it.
Bannister.
Yeah.
I don't know why he does it at an angle. I'm imagining there's a reason aside the aesthetics, but I don't know. I'm not a gun guy, so yeah. Have you seen the second Phantasm?
Not in a long time, but yeah, I have. I remember it was fun. I think that was the first Phantasm movie I saw on like Channel 11, and I'm like, wait, what is this? There's like magical dwarves and a ball and a is he a ghost and oh, the chainsaw fight. Okay, yeah, it's just batshit crazy, but a lot.
I think you can enter the Phantasm franchise at any movie and not have to go backwards
Mhm.
because they all
We'll have
build off of their own bullshit.
by the end. Yeah,
So you're kind of just every time it's like a new, it's like a new experience when the new Phantasm movie. You don't know what you're going to get. You just know there's going to be silver balls and Reggie Bannister.
yeah.
Um, which, hey, if that's all I get, that's what I get. It's a good guarantee. My runner-up is one that I actually had on my original list, but Phantasm 2 came to me while we were talking because I'm like, wait a minute, how can I not mention it? It's one of my favorite movies, let alone sequels. But my runner-up is Gremlins 2. Um, Almost
Uh,
not a horror movie.
yeah, I don't really think of them as horror movies, but I guess technically they are. But definitely one of the best sequels of all time.
Yeah, I mean, they're just in fact, reading about how it got made is as interesting as the movie itself.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's just got so much more money behind it. It's still hilarious, like
Oh yeah.
literally laugh out loud funny. Like some it is, and I do think that some of the like I don't want to sound like old man here. Like younger generations may not get all the references, like the Julia Child stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like that may fly over the head a bit, but it doesn't kind of take away from the insanity of a gremlin spider and the Gremlins babe.
And
I mean,
the electric gremlin, the salad gremlin, it really is that Key and Peele sketch over and over again. But didn't they say to Joe Dante, like, you could make whatever movie you want as long as you make Gremlins too? And he was like, okay. And they're like, just give us
they gave him
Gremlins.
a blank check
Yeah,
and said, as long
yeah,
as you make a new Gremlins movie, you can do whatever you want. And so he made a Looney Tune, he made a live action Looney Tunes cartoon,
yeah. Oh yeah,
and he nailed it. He nailed it.
yeah,
I did Joe Dante do the segment the in Twilight Zone the movie where the boy and like
yeah. The boy in the cornfield. Yeah,
yeah
that was him.
uh,
That's a great one. You know what's funny? I keep saying, why isn't that on Blu-ray? Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's a tough one. It's kind of like but well, to that end though, we do have Poltergeist 3 on 4K now, so I think enough time, with enough time passing, capitalism will show its head.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
And the Poltergeist 3 stuff is insane. Like the stuff the studio wanted to do right after Heather's death was, I don't know.
I didn't even hear about that, but I can only imagine.
They
Gee,
really rushed that. They really rushed them back into production to finish the movie, and were really pushing on them to like make cuts and edits to hide it. It's like one of those things. It's like the job has to get done, but
mhm,
man, with some fucking empathy would really do the trick right now.
seriously.
Um, but anyway, a studio. We all know that Hollywood is filled with villains and heroes alike. But those are some sequels that we think you should spend a little bit more time watching. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to be coming back for a second episode later in the month to talk about Fantastic Fest and all the cool shit we're going to be watching there. Hopefully, some future bangers. So, with that in mind, Lowell, good talking with you as always. And to everyone out there, all three of you that watch this, be good, stay safe, and most importantly, make sure you watch them horror movies.
What he said. Peace.
Adios.